banks. Talk to me about regulation and Brexit. If Brexit happens, if it's a hard and messy Brexit, are you concerned that there will be regulation that will be so vastly different here in the UK compared to the rest of Europe?
We surely don't know yet, but I can tell you that it would not be a route we would like to take to have a race to the bottom. We need to stay in very strict and clear rules and supervision, and we by no means can allow that these reforms we have taken up to now are going to be watered down.
Right. What can you do? What can the Bundesbank do? What can Europe do to try and make sure that this is protected?
We're going to stay together as we have, and we're going to make sure that we follow the rules and we follow the single rule book, and that we implement the rule of law, and that we combine good regulation with good supervision. So we are very committed to having the regulation and the supervision in place as it is, and that we don't have arbitrage amongst each other, but that we follow the same rules and procedures, which also means that the banks know with whom to talk and how to talk, and that there's no deviation from that.
What is the timeline here, Mr. Dombret? That's the one mystery I think I have. Frankly, there's a lot of other things I've got a mystery on, like the Trump timeline as well, the many timelines in the United States. What is the European timeline to get to a new financial regime?
We have very few parts of the regulatory reform still outstanding, the biggest one being the final touches on Basel III. And I believe that 2017, i.e. this year, will be the year when we implement also the last steps. But we are in no rush, and we should always put quality for speed. But this year will be the year when we finalize. That's my conviction. And I'm committed to finalize this year.
Joe Quinlan with us, with Bank of America Merrill Lynch and U.S. Trust. Help me here with the thing I keep talking about. Francine has a shot at tequila every time I mention mergers of banks. When does the combinations occur? What are we waiting for to combine down to a more Canadian simplistic system?
I mean, well, Tom, I think, the banks are being more nationalized, looking more homeward bound. So, I mean, the transatlantic financial system, I think, is becoming more fragmented, if anything else, Basel III or without it. So that worries me because capital flows are being hindered. We're not seeing the M&A activity. And so, the whole financial system, particularly transatlantic, is becoming fragmented and balkanized.
Every day I fight with Tom Keene. Every day he asks, when are banks in Europe going to merge? Because there's too much banking and a lot of them don't make financial sense. The answer I always try and give is regulation. Is there any appetite for regulators to see big merger M&A, which could mean more systemic risk?
If you look at the European banks, their problem is not necessarily that they're too fragmented, but that their earnings power is too low. And as a supervisor, we are interested in sustainable, reasonable earnings. And consolidation may be an answer, the correct consolidation. With that, I don't mean two weak banks getting together and forming an even weaker bank, but complement banks, or banks with synergies getting together and making sure that there is a path to higher earnings may well be a solution. But this is for the private sector to decide, and not for the central banks or for the supervisors. And we will look at each and every merger very, very closely. But we have seen mergers. We've seen a merger in France. We've seen a rather large merger in Germany. So by no means, from a supervisory perspective, mergers are a taboo, which we would like to see. It is one of many solutions you can use in order to make sure that your earnings are higher.
What about cross-border mergers? Would they be treated differently to domestic mergers?
No, not within the single supervisory mechanism.
All right, Mr. Dombret, talk to me about Brexit again. And if bankers leave the UK, will they go to Frankfurt or Dublin?
I don't know, and it's their decision. I expect those banks and those bankers to make the decision in the first half of this year. And many banks have told me that they want to be ready, at least in their decision-making, when Prime Minister May triggers Article 50. So we're not talking about too much more time until we know where bankers will go. I don't see it as my task and as my job to promote, let's say, the financial center of Frankfurt, because we work in a single rule book in the single supervisory mechanism, and it should be totally irrelevant, at least from financial stability point of view, whether you work out of Dublin or you work out of Frankfurt.
Right.
Frankfurt has things to offer, but other cities also have things to offer, and it's a private sector decision, and we're not going to promote our financial center over others.
Help me get to my 10 a.m. meeting this morning, sir, on Frankfurt versus Paris. Sell me on Frankfurt versus moving everything to Paris, as we talked about earlier this week.
I'm not going to sell you on Frankfurt, but we all know that Frankfurt is in the middle of Europe, has a very, very strong, let's say, airport where you don't have long commuting times. We have the ECB, IOPA, the Bundesbank, and other agencies there. If you want to be close to the regulator, that's a place where you can actually do that. It has a good infrastructure, it has enough space, but again, other cities have other things to offer, and it's really not my job to promote our financial center. This is a private sector decision, and all those banks know what they're doing, and they'll make a conscious decision. I expect, actually, that we will not have banks and bankers move to one city on the continent. I expect that there will be some diversity, and which also would mean that we will have some diversity in the risks across Europe. So banks will go to several cities for all the different reasons which have to do with the past, where they have been located in the past, where they have good management, where they feel confident and comfortable. So we will not have one solution. It will be several solutions.
I mean, we're not, Joe Quinlan, we're not distracted by this in America. It is a huge distraction for business.
It is. And,
it's gotten worse in the last 6 months.
Tom, the single market in the European Union 1992 project, it's not done. They're still working on it. So I think U.S. companies have worked around it. They're part of the problem, part of the solution. So, U.S. companies keep going, but they are concerned about Brexit. As a gentleman just talked about, where do you go? What do you do? Is it Ireland versus Frankfurt? But there's time to work this out.
Yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated, Francine, about the trend of this discussion over the last 6 months. I mean, it's been just extraordinary.
Yeah, it has been extraordinary. And actually, I want to go back to what you said, that some of the problems that we have here in Europe, you don't have in the US. I want to go back to Germany and what you, sir, would do or not do to attract, of course, bankers in Frankfurt. And then I want to ask you about US regulation. But first, is there a limit to what Frankfurt should do to attract bankers?
Yes, I can tell you from a German perspective, we will not allow fly and drive banking. We will not accept letterbox companies or empty shells and or dual hattings. So we will insist, as we have always done, that the management, the risk controlling, the controlling, and everything else on those businesses are in the country. Let's say in Germany, should one want to move to Germany, there will be no discounts from a German perspective for somebody who wants to move their business to Germany, but there will be strong and clear regulation and supervision.
Mr. Dombret, are you in touch with anyone in the U.S. about regulation? Are you in touch with Gary Cohn about what U.S. Wall Street companies will look like, and if they will still be on a level playing field with our European banks?
Right now, I'm not in touch with the American side, but I will always be at the table to discuss at any time they want to discuss.